In this video, we're going to take a look at a paper 4 question for the Cambridge Computer Science 9618 A level. This question is going to focus on an insertion sort walkthrough, which is something that could come up on your paper 4 exam. Let's go ahead and take a look at the question. So it's actually the first question on the paper 4 exam. A computer program is needed to store jobs in order of priority. Each job has a job number, for example, 1, 2, 3, and a priority from 1 to 10, with 1 being the highest priority and 10 being the lowest. Because I see 1 to 10 and they're talking about order of priority, I know most likely they're probably going to ask me to sort this data in some specific way. Now this question is focusing on an insertion sort, and that's how they're going to ask us. But there are multiple sorts that you need to be familiar with, so make sure you know all of them, and as you study, it will become easier. But let's go ahead and get back to this question. The program stores the jobs in a global 2D array. Right away, I need to make sure that I notice that it's a global 2D array. I need to make sure that when I declare this variable, which is going to be jobs, that 2D array, that I make it global. If you do not make it global and you make it local, meaning it's inside sub main or another method, function, or procedure, like a sub, you're not going to get full points. So if it says global, you have to make it global. So it says declare jobs, that's going to be an array. Here for the first number, that's going to be our rows. It says that the lower bound must include 0. So we're not going to be able to skip over 0. We can't go from row 1 to 100. We're going to have to go to 0 to 99 because it tells us to do that. So I know I'm going to have 100 rows here, row 0 being my first row and row 99 being my 100th row. Then how many columns do I have? Well, they want me to start at index 0. Not a problem. So we're going to have 2 columns. My first column at index 0, my second column at index 1. Then they give us an example. Jobs 0, 0 at row 0, column 0. That's going to store the job number of the very first job. Job 0, 1 stores the priority of the first job. The global variable, I want to stop right there. I want to go ahead and mark that it's a global variable. I don't want to lose easy points here. We want to make sure we're getting all those points. So the global variable, number of jobs, stores the number of jobs currently in the array. Write program code to declare the global 2D array jobs and the global variable number of jobs. Before we do this, what I want to do is I wanted to, on my paper, just really quick, sketch out a rough draft of what the 2D array looks like. If we have a visual representation, it's much easier to understand what our code is actually doing. So job number, that's going to be in the first column. The second column is going to be the priority. Here at job 0, 0, that stores the job number of the first job. So I know my job numbers are going to be in the first column, and the second job number will be on row 2, which is index 1. The third one on row 3, which is represented by the second index, and then the final row, which is represented by index 3. So if I'm looking for the job number, that's going to be in the first column, just on a different row. If I'm looking for their priority, that's going to be directly by each job number. Now that we have a visual representation, we're ready to swing over to VB, code this out, and pick up 3 points in our paper 4 exam. All right, so we need to make sure this doesn't go inside of our sub. Our global variables will always go here. So they always go outside our sub main. So all we're going to do is we're going to create that 2D array. They called it jobs. What was my lower bound? Well, my lower bound is going to be 0. So that means I'm going to have up to 100 rows. Because we're including 0, 99 is going to be what I type in there. That will give me indexes 0 to 99 for my rows. And then for the columns, what was the upper bound? It was 1. What is the data type? It was an integer. Just like that, I just picked up a point. 1 easy point. Then all I need to do now is number of jobs. That's going to be an integer as well. And you want to spell integer correctly. I just picked up my second point. How did I get my third point? By making them global. We just picked up 3 of 75 points in our paper 4 exam. Let's switch back over and take a look at the next part of the question. So the next part of the question, part B, the procedure initialize stores -1 in each of the array elements and assigns 0 to number of jobs. Write program code for the procedure initialize. What is initialization? Well, that means we're assigning a value to a variable. We're giving it a starting value. So when you see initialize, you're like, well, What does that mean? That means we're just giving these variables a starting value, and they're calling the procedure, which means a sub, not a function, we're going to call initialize, and we're going to spell it with an S. Now here in the States, we spell initialize with a Z, but I'm going to spell it like they did just to keep them happy. So let's swing over to VB. Let's code out initialize and pick up another 3 points. All right, so we're back over here in VB, coding it out. We're going to call it initialize, and I'm going to spell it with an S. So it's going to underline it in blue because it's not a word that's recognized, but that's okay. That doesn't matter. Now I'm going to set number of jobs. I'm just going to set that equal to 0. That gives me a point right there. And then I need to set each part of the 2D array jobs to -1. So I'm going to do for I equals 0 to 99. I want to start on row 0 and increment each time I move down the rows. But I need an inner loop 0 to 1, and that's what J is. J is dealing with the columns. So when this runs the first time, I want to start on row 0. That's what I is representing. I is representing the rows. I also want to start on column 0. That's going to give me the job number. Then this inner loop is going to increment while I is still 0. When J increments to 1, now we're going to be on row 0, column 1, which is the job priority. Then it's going to loop back around. I is going to increment to 1. J is going to restart at 0. That means on row 1, column 0, we're going to get the second job. Then J increments again, moving us to row 1, column 1, which will give us the job priority for job number 2. So they want us to set all of it to -1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do jobs I, J equals -1. And just like that, we are done. So we have our sub initialized, we have our in sub, we set number of jobs equal to 0. We use a nested for loop to iterate through the 2D array, assigning each one or initializing the value to -1. So we've just picked up another 3 points, bringing our total to 6 points of the 75. Let's swing back over and take a look at the next part of the question. All right, the procedure and job. Procedure is something I definitely want to pay attention to. This tells me that it's going to be a sub, not a function. There's not going to be anything being returned here. So it takes a job number and priority as parameters. So I want to make sure I have job number and priority as the parameters that's coming down. I want to store the job in the next free array element. Now when it says store the job, there are 2 things I need to store. The job number that is in the first column, and then I need to store the job priority in the second column of the row. How do I know what row I'm on? Well, that's what number of jobs is going to be. It starts at 0. So when we run it the first time, we're going to insert something into the very first row, which is going to be represented by index 0. Now, it doesn't tell us to, but we need to keep track of where the next free index is. We got to keep track of that. So we're actually going to increment number of jobs by 1 every time we add it. That way we know what is the next row to be used when we add another job. Outputs added if the job was successfully stored in the array. Outputs not added if the job was not successfully stored in the array. Write program code for the procedure add job, and this is worth 5 points. Nothing that you can't handle, but let's swing over to VB, code it out, and pick up another 5 points on this paper 4 exam. All right, so we're going to have our sub here, so we're going to do sub add job. Now there are 2 parameters. Now because we have global variables here, it doesn't matter if you do it by val or by ref. If they were local variables and we wanted to update number of jobs, we would have to do by ref. Because this is global, we're just going to do by val. So we're going to do by val job number as integer. And then the second one that they give us is going to be priority. That was the second thing coming down. That's going to be an integer as well. I'm not going to have a return value because this is a sub, so there's nothing that goes outside these parentheses here. Now I want to touch on Python just for 1 second. If you are coding this in Python, you have to put your custom procedures at the very top. Python runs line by line. So if you're inside your main part of your code and you're calling a sub or function that is below it, it hasn't been written yet. So it's going to say that it doesn't exist. So remember, if you're in Python, you want to be writing these custom procedures above your main code. So just keep that in mind, especially if you're new to programming. But if you're not new to programming, then you already know that. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the job number. So how do we know if we can add a job? Well, what is the max index for the rows? That's going to be 99. If I'm at 99 or less, then I know I can add it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do if number of jobs is less than or equal to 99, then I'm going to add a job. If it's not less than or equal to 99, I know I'm at 100 or higher. So what I'm actually going to do is say, hey, not added because it's full. So if the number of jobs is less than or equal to 99, then I need to update that jobs to the array. That's going to be my job number. That's going to be what's going to come down. Is it job number 0? Is it 1? Is it 2? Is it 3? Is it 4? Is it 5? And that is, actually, that is number of jobs because that's what's representing it. And then in column 0, what am I putting there? I'm putting the new job number. Now, every job number also has a job priority. So I'm going to do jobs, number of jobs, and that's going to be in column 1. And that's going to be priority, which is going to be passed down through this variable, priority. Now, what I need to make sure is that I increment number of jobs because I just filled the very first row, row 0, the first time it runs. The next row that's going to be updated is going to be row index 1. So now I'm going to do number of jobs plus equals 1. That will increment number of jobs. And then I'm going to say job added. And then if I don't add it, then I'm going to say console.writeLine job not added. And that way we pick up all the points we need. And that is 5 points. We want to make sure we have our parameters, job number and priority. They gave that to us. We want to check and make sure we have room inside our 2D array. How do we know if we have room? Well, if the number of jobs that we're checking out, how many jobs do we have? As long as we have less than or equal to 99, we're good. You might be saying, well, hold on, there's 100 jobs. Don't forget, our first job starts at index 0. And if we count 0 to 99, that is 100 numbers. Inside job number of jobs, if it's 0, then that means in the first column, which is column 0, we're going to put the job number directly to the right of that. In column 1, we're going to put the priority. We're going to increment number of jobs by 1. That will kick it to the next row. So when we call add jobs again, we'll be on the next available row. Again, these can be by val or by ref. It does not matter because they are global variables. If they were local variables, it would without a doubt have to be by ref. But let's swing over and take a look at the next part of the question. All right, we're moving right along to part D. The main program should call the procedure initialize and then use the add job procedure to store the following jobs in the order given. And it's talking about the main program. That is the main portion of our code. In VB, that is submain. In Java, that's going to be the main method. In Python, that's going to be outside all your local or all your custom procedures or methods that you have. Make sure you're not indented so you're not part of those procedures. That's going to be where your main code is. So we have job number 12, priority 10, 526, priority 9, 33, priority 8. Job number 12 has a priority of 9, and job number 78 has a priority of 1. Looking at this, we could organize it by job number, or we could do it by priority. Actually, we couldn't do it by job number because there's two number 12. So they're probably going to have us do it by priority, and that's fine. We'll get to that part. But notice it says write program code for the main program and perform the tasks described. So let's swing over to submain and VB, and let's go ahead and code this out and earn an easy 2 points towards our paper 4 score. All right, so when we call these, part of our main program is submain. That's what they mean by our main program. They want us to call initialize, and that's with, spelled it with an S. I should have spelled it with a Z. You know, that S is going to throw me off, but it's fine. Spelling is not a requirement, but that's fine. Initialize is there. Then we want to do add job, and they wanted us to add it in a specific order. Now, my parameter, the order of parameters does matter. The first one they give me is the job number followed by their priority. So job 12 had a priority of 10. And we have to add it in this order. They were very specific about that. So we want to make sure we put it in the right order. If we don't, they're going to dock points from the total marks that we could earn. We had job 33, which was 8. Then we had job 12, which had a priority of 9. And the last one we had was job 78 with a priority of 1. So just like that, by calling them and calling my initialize procedure, my add job procedure with the correct parameters in the correct order, I'm able to pick up 2 points towards our paper 4 exam. Let's go ahead and take a look at the next part of the question. All right, when a new job has been added, the array is sorted into ascending numerical order of priority. Use an insertion sort. So I know it's all going to be about the rows, but looking at the second column, which is represented by index 1. That is what we're going to be comparing. Write program code for the procedure. So another sub here, insertion sort. What a great name. To sort the data into ascending numerical order of priority. Nothing we can't handle. Let's swing over to VB. Let's take a look at the priority number to see if it's greater. If so, we need to flip it around. Remember, we always start with the second item inside the 2D array. There's nothing to compare the first item to, so we're going to start with the second item. So when we run our for loop, we're actually going to start at 1, not 0. But let's swing over and I'll walk you through it and we'll code it out. So we have our insertion sort here. I went ahead and wrote it. Let's walk through the code and talk about what it's doing. What's the point of these temp job and temp job P? Well, that's because if I'm going to switch parts of the 2D array, the job number and the job priority with another one, I need to be able to store that data somewhere because I don't want to overwrite it. If I overwrite it, the data is gone. And then I'm going to wind up with duplicate data inside there. My current index is where I'm currently at in the index. I want to start at the second item and I want to compare it to the first item. But eventually I want to compare the third item to the first and second item. Then I'm going to be at the fourth item and compare that to the third, the second, and the first item. And then finally the fifth item, which is index 4, I want to compare that to the fourth item, the third item, the second, and then the first. So that's what the current index does, keeps us at the right position. Then correct. If it's in the correct place, I don't need to do any more switching. So I'm going to set that to true once that's done. Let's take a look at this for loop. For I equals 1 to number of jobs minus 1. Why are we starting at 1? Because remember, they said we must use index 0 inside the pseudocode. We do not need to start at index 0. There is nothing before index 0. There is no index -1. There's nothing to compare it to. Inside our insertion sort, we always start at the second item, which is going to be 1. Why is number of jobs minus 1? So let's take a look at our add jobs that we called, or add job. When this line of code runs, this first line of code, I'm adding something to row 0. That's going to be my first item. But number of jobs increments after we add the job successfully by 1. So after this line of code runs, number of jobs is going to be equal to 1. After this line runs, number of jobs is going to be equal to 2. When I run this one, it's going to be 3. This one, number of jobs becomes 4. And this one, number of jobs becomes 5. However, we start at index 0. This is index 0. This is going to be in index 1 or row 1. So row 0, row 1. This one's in row 2. This one's in row 3. This one is in row 4. So we don't need to go to the 5th row, only the 4th row. That is why we have number of jobs minus 1. If I just do to number of jobs, I'm going to wind up with a job number of -1, and then I'm going to wind up with the job priority as -1. So I want to temporarily store whatever row I'm on. I want to store the job number, which is going to be the row followed by column 0, and then the job priority, which is going to be on whatever row we're at, column 1. I want to set my current index to I. I want to make sure I gets loaded into my current index so I know where I'm starting from. Now I'm going to be updating that as I move closer to the beginning of the array. So I set correct equal to false because I don't know if it's in the right place yet. And then I'm going to check that the current index where we currently are, I want to make sure it's greater than 0 and that it's not in the correct place. If it's not in the correct place, and it's greater than 0, I need to check to see, do I need to switch these items in the 2D array? Do I need to switch the job number and the job priority? Well, how do I know if I need to switch it? That's based on the job priority. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the current index -1. This is checking the very first item. I'm checking that job priority with the current job priority I'm at. So if you look up here, this is where I currently am. This is the item that is before it in the array. If this one is greater, I need to flip them around. So what I'm going to do is inside my current index, I'm going to take what is inside current index -1. I'm going to put that in the current index, and then I'm going to do the same thing for the job priority. So it's very important that we check that out. And I'm glad I'm going through this because job priority is in row 1. So that could have caused some minor errors there. So I'm glad I saw that. Current index. Current index, we need to decrement by 1. If I'm at index 3, row 3, then I need to check and compare that to row 2 and then row 1. That's why we have it. Once I get to 0, we're good. This loop's not even going to run. If this is not true, then I know it's in the correct place. So I set correct equal to true. Then what I need to do is right here, I overwrote that existing data. So what I need to do is put the new items back in there. So that's going to be after that loop runs. So that's going to be temp job goes into my current index wherever I am in 0, and then temp job P goes into my current index and then 1. And that's because current index will update. So when you're like, uh-oh, all we're doing is overriding these. No, we're not. We are not overriding those. Only if this if statement runs, because this value is held by the, they've been switched around. So you want to be on the lookout for that. But we're going to see this run momentarily, but let's switch back over to our presentation and take a look at the next part of the question. All right, getting very close to the end, the procedure print array outputs each job number and priority on a line. So for example, 123 priority 1, 39 priority 3, 120 priority 7. So they want to print the job number followed by the word priority, followed by the job priority, and they want it to be in order. So it outputs each job number and priority on a line. So we're going to do that, and then I'm sure it's going to have us call the insertion sort so we can actually sort the data so it outputs correctly. So let's switch over to VB. Let's code this procedure and get ready to wrap this question up. So it talks about that procedure. We know right now that is a sub, and they want us to call it print array. Doesn't accept any parameters, so I'm going to pick up a point for doing that right there. Now, for this, you could use a nested for loop. If you're going to use a nested for loop, you need to make sure that you kick the cursor to the next line. I think that is more trouble than it's worth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this in a single for loop, and I'll show you how it's done. This would not be wise to do if you had multiple columns, because we only have 2. It's very easy to work with. I'm going to do 0 to number of jobs, -1. Remember, if I'm in the 4th row, that means I have 5 items. I want to output only up to the 4th row, not the 5th row, because we started at index 0. So again, that's why we have number of jobs -1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to output. What was the first thing it wanted us to output? It wanted us to output the job number. Well, that's going to be in my jobs 2D array. I'm going to start at I want column 0. That is what I'm going to have there. The next thing was the word priority. And I'm going to put a space in there. I don't want my text running together. Now, the good news is during the test, if it starts to run together when you print it out to test it, not a big deal. You just go back in and fix it. And I need to print the job priority, and that is inside column 1. So that'll do it. That's all I need to do, and that will print the job number, followed by the job priority, which is exactly what they wanted. And just like that, we picked up 3 points. Let's swing back over and take a look at the last part of the question for this part of the exam. All right, part G, the main program needs to sort the array and then output the contents of the array. Amend the main program, that's our submain, by writing program code to call procedure insertion sort and print array. And then we test our program and make sure it works. So now's the moment of truth. Let's switch back over to VB. Let's run our code and make sure it works. So it says it wants us to amend the main program. What that means is we're going to pick up right where we left off. So here we're going to do our insertion sorts. Then what we're going to do is we're going to print the array. Then what we're going to do is we're going to save it. We're going to run it, and let's make sure it should say job added or whatever we typed in for that. Then we should see it in order of priority. So let's go ahead, let's run this, and let's test it out. Make sure it matches what we have and what we need. So we're looking at this set of data right here. So it's running. Oh, want to hit Control F5 so it continues to run. Don't want it to close right away. And it looks correct. Let's take a look here. So we have job added, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we had 5 jobs added. That's right here. Now, the first number should be 78, priority 1, and we see that. The next one should be 33, priority 8, and it is. The next one should be 526 or 12, priority 9. It's not going to matter which one we put in. That is okay because they have these same priorities. So that's going to be okay because we're not doing it by job number. We're doing it by priority number. And then we can see job 12 has a priority of 9. Then another job 12 has a priority of 10. Not sure why they have the same job number there, but it does match the data that we had earlier. I'm double checking it right now, and it does match the data we have earlier. So that's going to walk you through the question on a paper 4 exam for an insertion sort. Hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did, please take a moment to help me out and give me a thumbs up and subscribe to help the channel grow. And we'll see you guys in the next review video.